What drives a lone woman to confront ancient, brutal traditions, risking her life to save the most vulnerable in a land far from home? In this powerful, true story of unwavering faith and indomitable courage, journey through the extraordinary life of Mary Slessor, a Scottish millworker who became a beacon of hope in the perilous heart of West Africa. From the dark streets of Dundee to the dense jungles of Calabar, Mary's life was an audacious testament to compassion, challenging a society where twins were abandoned, human sacrifices were made, and justice was a poison ordeal. Discover how this remarkable woman, armed only with her Bible and a fierce love for humanity, left an indelible legacy, transforming a nation and inspiring generations. Like this video, if Mary Slessor's story moves you, subscribe for more true Christian biographies that stir the soul. Share this with a friend who needs to hear of extraordinary bravery. The wind that swept through the industrial closes of Dundee, Scotland, in the mid-19th century carried the grime of coal dust and the cries of child laborers. It was here, in a city synonymous with jute mills and grinding poverty, that Mary Slessor's life began to take shape. Born in Aberdeen in 1848, Mary was the second of 7 children to Robert and Mary Slessor. Her father, a shoemaker by trade, eventually succumbed to the pervasive vice of alcoholism, plunging the family into deeper destitution. By the time Mary was 11, the family had moved to Dundee, and she, like thousands of other children, was forced into the deafening clatter of the textile mill. 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, surrounded by the lint and noise, she operated the powerful looms. This harsh reality forged in her an enduring resilience, a deep empathy for the suffering, and an unshakable work ethic. Yet, even amidst the relentless rhythm of the mill, a different kind of thread was being woven into her soul. Her mother, a woman of profound faith and quiet strength, instilled in Mary the teachings of the United Presbyterian Church. Sunday school, prayer meetings, and the reading of Scripture offered a sanctuary from the harshness of daily life. It was within these hallowed walls that Mary's spiritual journey began to deepen. She absorbed the stories of biblical heroes, of sacrifice and divine intervention. Even as a child, she exhibited an unusual seriousness, a quiet intensity that set her apart. She was known for her quick wit, her piercing blue eyes, and a stubborn resolve that would later define her. But it was a particular missionary magazine that truly ignited a fire within her, a periodical recounting the daring exploits of David Livingstone in the wilds of Africa. His tales of unreached tribes, spiritual darkness, and the urgent need for the gospel resonated deeply with the young mill girl. The image of Africa, distant and dangerous, captivated her imagination. She began to dream of a life beyond the soot-stained windows of Dundee, a life poured out for a greater purpose. She yearned to answer a call that whispered of self-sacrifice and divine adventure. Even though her family's poverty and her father's struggles seemed to anchor her to Dundee, the dream of Africa slowly began to displace the reality of the mill. How could a girl with such humble beginnings ever reach such a faraway land? The question lingered, a quiet challenge in the heart of a determined young woman. The year was 1876, and Mary Slessor, now 28, finally set sail from Liverpool, bound for Calabar, West Africa. The long, arduous sea journey was a baptism by isolation, a transition from the familiar gray skies of Scotland to the oppressive humidity and vibrant, alien beauty of the tropics. When she arrived, Calabar was not an untouched wilderness. European traders had long established a presence, and mission societies, including her own United Presbyterian Church, had already laid some groundwork. But even in these established areas, the clash of cultures was stark, and the spiritual darkness she had read about in Dundee was palpable. She was initially stationed at the Hope Waddell Training Institute, a mission compound that offered a degree of European comfort and protection. Here, she began the daunting task of learning the Efik language, a complex tonal tongue that required immense patience and immersion. She also battled the relentless onslaught of malaria, a disease that claimed many European lives and frequently left her weak and feverish. The climate, the food, the insects, everything was a test of endurance. Yet amidst these physical and mental challenges, Mary's empathy for the local people deepened. She observed their customs, their joys, and their profound sorrows. She saw the devastating impact of ancient superstitions, particularly on the most vulnerable members of society. She learned of the widespread practice of human sacrifice, where slaves or relatives were killed to accompany a deceased chief into the afterlife. She witnessed the terror of the Calabar bean, a poison used in trials by ordeal to determine guilt or innocence, often leading to agonizing death for the accused. But nothing shocked her quite like the pervasive fear surrounding the birth of twins. In Efik society, the birth of twins was considered an evil omen, a sign that the mother had consorted with evil spirits. One or both of the infants were often abandoned in the bush to die, seen as unnatural abominations. Their mothers were ostracized, sometimes killed. This barbaric practice ignited a fierce fire within Mary. Her heart, so tender towards children, could not reconcile itself with such cruelty. She spent her early years in Calabar, learning, observing, and establishing trust, but a growing restlessness stirred within her. The relative safety and structure of the mission compound felt too comfortable, too removed from the true heart of the people she had come to serve. Her gaze began to turn inland, towards the unknown territories, the unreached tribes where the gospel had not yet penetrated, and where these dark traditions held an even tighter grip. She knew the journey would be fraught with danger, that she would be leaving behind all semblance of European protection. But the call was undeniable, a persistent whisper on the wind, urging her deeper into the bush, into the heart of the darkness, where the need was greatest. Her resolve had been tested, but it had not wavered. She was ready to leave the known for the truly unknown, to venture where no European woman had dared to go alone. The Okoyong region awaited, a land steeped in ancient fears and ripe for a different kind of courage. In 1888, Mary Slessor made the audacious decision to leave the relative safety of the mission station in Duketown and venture into the Okoyong region, a territory largely untouched by missionary influence. This was a land considered dangerous, inhabited by fiercely independent tribes known for their violent customs and deep-seated superstitions. To go there, and to go alone as a woman, was an act of profound courage and trust in God. She packed her few belongings, her Bible, and a basic medicine chest, journeying up the treacherous Calabar River in a canoe. Her new home was a simple mud hut, built amongst the Okoyong people, a far cry from the European comforts she had left behind. She deliberately embraced their way of life, learning their distinct dialect, eating their food, and even adopting their mannerisms. This wasn't just a strategic choice. It was an expression of her deeply held belief that to truly reach a people, one must live among them, share their joys and sorrows, and earn their trust through authentic relationship. She built her house to serve as a home, a school, and a clinic, an open door to anyone in need. Her presence, initially met with suspicion and curiosity, slowly began to thaw the icy reserve of the Okoyong people. Her reputation, however, would be forged in a crucible of constant confrontation with the most brutal of their traditions. The practice of infanticide, particularly of twins, was rampant. The Okoyong believed that for a woman to give birth to twins, she must have committed a great sin, or one of the babies was an evil spirit, and the other, though innocent, must die to prevent the evil from spreading. Mary Slessor could not stand by and watch. Time and time again she would hear the cries of a new mother, the hushed whispers of a double birth, and she would race to the scene, often arriving just as the infants were about to be abandoned in the bush. With a fierce protectiveness and an unshakable faith, she would take the babies into her arms, bringing them back to her hut. She created twin homes, safe havens where these abandoned children were not only protected but loved, fed, and educated. She became a mother to dozens of children, raising them alongside her own adopted African children. Her actions were revolutionary, confronting centuries of fear and superstition head-on. She didn't just preach against the practice, she actively intervened, sometimes physically interposing herself between the babies and their fate. Her unwavering commitment, her visible love for these children, slowly chipped away at the deeply ingrained beliefs. But her crusade extended beyond the plight of twins. Human sacrifice, though less frequent, was still practiced at the deaths of important chiefs or elders. Mary, often alerted by whispers, would rush to the scene, boldly confronting the village leaders, sometimes even cutting the ropes that bound the intended victims. Her imposing presence, her fearless determination, and her reputation as an unyielding spirit woman often swayed the elders. She would patiently explain the sanctity of human life, not through theological arguments they couldn't grasp, but through the simple, powerful message of God's love. She also fought against the trial by ordeal, where accused individuals were forced to drink a poisonous concoction made from the Calabar bean. If they vomited, they were innocent. If they died, they were guilty. Mary tirelessly campaigned against this brutal form of justice, often rescuing those accused and offering a different path towards arbitration. Her fearlessness and an uncanny ability to understand and navigate tribal disputes eventually earned her an unprecedented level of respect and authority. In 1892, she was appointed vice consul in the Okoyong region by the British-led colonial administration, effectively making her a magistrate. She became the first woman in the British Empire to hold such a position. She settled disputes, imposed fines, and even sentenced criminals, always striving for fairness and justice based on Christian principles rather than tribal law. She was often seen walking barefoot through the jungle, a symbol of her integration and her tireless dedication to her adopted people. She taught them practical skills, basic hygiene, and the importance of education. Under her influence, schools were established and simple medical care became available. The once violent Okoyong region began to transform. Raids between villages decreased, markets flourished, and children, once condemned, now played freely. She was referred to by the locals as Ma Akamba, Great Mother, or Eka Kapukpru Owo, Mother of all people, and affectionately the White Queen of Okoyong. Her actions proved that profound change could be achieved not through force, but through persistent love, radical courage, and an absolute surrender to a divine calling. Yet, the price of such devotion was immeasurable, a constant negotiation between service and self, between the call and the cost. Mary Slessor's life in Okoyong was a constant dance with personal sacrifice and profound spiritual depth. The physical toll was immense. She battled recurring bouts of malaria that left her frail and weakened. The humid climate, the inadequate diet, and the relentless demands of her ministry took a heavy toll on her body. Yet, she rarely complained, often remarking that any suffering was a small price to pay for the souls she served. Loneliness was a constant companion. Though surrounded by the Okoyong people, she was often the only European for miles, navigating cultural complexities and spiritual battles largely on her own. She never married, pouring all her maternal instincts into the dozens of children she rescued and raised, some as her own foster children. She experienced the heartbreak of loss, as several of her adopted children succumbed to the diseases of the land. Each death was a fresh wound, yet each strengthened her resolve to fight for the living. She faced challenges not only from the indigenous people, but sometimes from her fellow missionaries. Her radical approach to ministry, her deep immersion in local culture, her willingness to live in conditions considered unsuitable for a European woman, and her strong, independent spirit often put her at odds with the more conventional mission hierarchy. They sometimes viewed her as eccentric, too bold, or even reckless. She refused to conform to their expectations of a proper lady missionary, dressing simply, speaking bluntly, and always prioritizing the needs of her people over missionary protocol. Yet, her spiritual life remained the unwavering anchor. Hours spent in prayer, often in the quiet solitude of her hut or under the vast African skita, fueled her tireless work. Her Bible was her constant companion, its words a source of comfort, guidance, and fierce conviction. She believed implicitly in God's provision and protection, often stepping into perilous situations with a calm assurance that bordered on the miraculous. Her faith wasn't abstract. It was a gritty, tangible force that powered her through every challenge, every illness, every moment of despair. She drew strength from her deep intimacy with Christ, a wellspring that never ran dry. Her journal entries, though sparse, reveal a profound personal relationship with Jesus, a total surrender to his will, and an unshakable belief in his power to transform lives and societies. She understood that true authority came not from position or power, but from a life laid down in humble obedience to God. By the early 1900s, Mary Slessor, now in her 50s and 60s, was no longer the vigorous young woman who had first ventured into Okoyong. Her body, ravaged by tropical diseases and decades of relentless service, was failing. Yet, her spirit remained indomitable, her resolve unbroken. Despite increasing frailty, she continued her work, though often needing to be carried in a hammock to reach remote villages. Her influence had spread far beyond Okoyong. She was known and revered across the Calabar region as a woman of immense wisdom, courage, and spiritual power. She spent her later years consolidating the mission work she had pioneered, training local leaders, and ensuring the sustainability of the schools and churches she had established. She witnessed the fruits of her labor, a generation of Okoyong people who had grown up free from the fear of infanticide, educated in mission schools, and embraced the Christian faith. The transformation of a once brutal society into a community built on peace and mutual respect was a living testament to her life's work. Her death, on January 13, 1915, at the age of 66, was met with widespread mourning across Nigeria and beyond. She died peacefully in her home in Odoro Ikpe, among her adopted children and beloved Okoyong people. The funeral procession was enormous, a testament to the profound impact she had made. Chiefs, villagers, missionaries, and colonial officials alike gathered to honor the woman who had brought light to their land. She was buried in the Calabar cemetery, her final resting place in the land she had adopted as her own. Mary Slessor left no elaborate theological treatises or grand institutions named solely in her honor. Instead, she left a legacy etched in the transformed lives of thousands. Her work inspired countless missionaries who followed in her footsteps, particularly women who dared to challenge the conventions of their time to serve in remote fields. Her story became a powerful narrative of courage in the face of ancient evil, of compassion triumphing over cruelty, and of the profound impact one's surrendered life can have on an entire nation. Even today, her name is celebrated in Nigeria with schools, hospitals, and streets named after her. She remains a powerful symbol of missionary fervor, social justice, and unwavering faith. Her life continues to challenge believers to step beyond their comfort zones, to confront injustice, and to live a life fully devoted to the call of Christ. Lessons from the unyielding spirit of Mary Slessor. 1. Radical immersion breeds true impact. Mary's willingness to live simply, learn the language, and adopt the customs of the Okoyong people allowed her to build deep trust and effect lasting change, demonstrating that genuine connection is paramount in cross-cultural work. 2. Courage can overcome centuries of fear. She fearlessly confronted deeply ingrained brutal traditions like infanticide and human sacrifice, proving that one person's unyielding courage, rooted in faith, can challenge and ultimately transform dark societal norms. 3. Compassion fuels unconventional ministry. Her boundless compassion for the most vulnerable, especially abandoned twins, drove her to adopt methods that often defied conventional missionary practices, highlighting that love and empathy should always guide our actions. 4. Spiritual authority surpasses earthly power. Mary's appointment as a magistrate was a recognition of the moral and spiritual authority she wielded. She showed that true leadership emerged not from political office, but from a life of integrity, prayer, and selfless service. 5. Loneliness and suffering can refine, not define. Despite recurring illness, intense loneliness, and personal loss, Mary's faith deepened. Her life illustrates that hardship, when surrendered to God, can become a crucible for profound spiritual growth and unwavering resolve. 6. Legacy is built on lives, not monuments. Mary Slessor left behind no grand cathedrals or vast organizations bearing her name, but a legacy of lives saved, communities transformed, and a generation raised in hope and faith, demonstrating that true impact is measured in changed hearts. 7. unwavering faith in God's provision. Her trust in God was absolute. Living without guaranteed support, she consistently witnessed divine provision, reminding us that when we step out in faith, God is faithful to meet our needs and empower our mission.